The day Kalen found her was like any other on Xylos, bitter, dusty, and unforgiving. The moon's toxic atmosphere swirled outside his salvaged suit as he trudged through the ruins of what had once been a mining outpost. 5 years since the corporate wars had rendered this place uninhabitable to all but the most desperate, and Kalen counted himself among them. A self-imposed exile, far from the military that had shaped him, then broken him. His scanner pinged softly against his hip, something with power buried in the debris field ahead. Probably just another broken drone or discarded tech, but in the scavenger economy of Xylos, even fragments had value. What he found instead would change everything. The stasis pod was half buried in rubble, its casing cracked and sparking intermittently. It resembled a cage more than a medical device, reinforced with restraints and security measures that went well beyond standard transport protocols. Kalen's military training flared warning signals in his mind. This was military-grade containment, or worse, corporate black ops. He should have walked away, should have marked it on his map as a potential hazard, and continued his scavenging elsewhere. But then he saw her. Through a jagged crack in the pod's viewing panel, illuminated by the feeble emergency lighting, was a young woman. No, not human. Her crystalline skin refracted the light in impossible patterns, creating tiny rainbows where tears tracked down her face. She was naked, emaciated, her body covered in bruises and minor energy burns. She didn't move except for the silent shuddering of her shoulders as she wept. Kalen had spent years on Xylos trying to forget what he'd seen during the war. The civilians he couldn't save when his unit had been ordered to retreat from the Nexus colony attack. Their faces haunted his dreams, their pleading eyes following him across the galaxy to this desolate rock. He'd failed them, abandoned his post rather than follow another order that would sacrifice innocence. And now, here was another innocent, caged and broken. Shit, he muttered to himself, already knowing he was about to make another potentially disastrous decision. This creature was clearly valuable to someone. Dangerous, even. Rescuing her would put a target on his back the size of a cruiser. But those tears, they were unmistakably the tears of sentient suffering. With practiced efficiency, Kalen set up a perimeter scanner to alert him of any approaching signals. Then he began the delicate work of bypassing the pod security systems. It took nearly an hour of careful manipulation before the locking mechanism finally disengaged with a reluctant hiss. The crystal skin woman didn't react when the pod fully opened. Her eyes, iridescent orbs without pupils, were unfocused, staring at nothing. Up close, Kalen could see she was in worse shape than he'd initially thought. Her breathing was shallow, and her translucent skin revealed a network of veins pulsing with faint blue light. "I'm not going to hurt you," Kalen said, though he doubted she understood. "But we need to move. This place isn't safe." He wrapped her in his emergency thermal blanket, careful not to touch her skin directly. When he lifted her from the pod, she weighed almost nothing, her body rigid with fear or trauma or both. She didn't struggle as he carried her back to his transport, didn't make a sound except for the quiet whisper of tears. His hideout, an abandoned mining shaft he'd converted into a living space, was a 3-hour journey through Xylos' harsh terrain. During the entire trip, the alien girl remained motionless, curled into herself beneath the thermal blanket. Occasionally, Kalen glanced back to ensure she was still breathing, but otherwise, he focused on avoiding the numerous hazards of Xylos' surface: acid rain pockets, unstable ground, and the ever-present risk of other scavengers spotting his cargo. By the time they reached the safety of his hideout, night had fallen on Xylos. Not that it made much difference in the perpetual gloom. Kalen's home was Spartan but secure. Reinforced walls, recycled air system, power generated from geothermal vents, and enough supplies to last months if necessary. Most importantly, it was shielded from standard scanners, a trick he'd learned during his military days. He placed the alien girl on his cot, keeping the thermal blanket wrapped around her. She immediately curled into a tight ball, face hidden, shoulders trembling. "You're safe here," Kalen said, keeping his distance. No one's going to find you. He prepared a nutrient solution, the blandest, most universal formula he had, and set it beside the cot. Then he retreated to his workbench, watching her from the corner of his eye while pretending to tinker with salvage. Hours passed. The girl neither moved nor spoke. The nutrient solution remained untouched. Kalen eventually fell into an uneasy sleep in his chair, one hand on his blaster. He woke to find her exactly as he'd left her, except her eyes were open now, watching him. When she saw him stir, she immediately looked away. "You need to eat," Kalen said, gesturing to the nutrient solution. "Food, to help you get stronger." No response. Kalen sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. What the hell was he doing? He knew nothing about this creature, her physiology, her needs, whether she was even sentient in the way he understood. Yet something in those tears had been undeniably familiar. Pain transcended species. He retrieved some old clothing, a simple tunic and pants he'd salvaged months ago, and placed them on the edge of the cot. "For you," he said, then turned away to give her privacy. "When you're ready." Over the next few days, a routine developed. Kalen would prepare food, leave clothes or medical supplies, and speak occasional simple words, expecting nothing in return. The alien girl remained silent, but small changes indicated she was more than a traumatized shell. She began to eat the nutrient paste, gradually accepted the clothing, and sometimes, when Kalen spoke, her head would turn slightly toward his voice. He started calling her Echo, a name that seemed to fit her silent, haunting presence. "Echo," he would say, pointing to her. "That's you. I'm Kalen." On the fifth day, he noticed her watching him as he repaired a scanner. Her gaze was intent, focused on his hands as they manipulated the delicate components. When he looked up, she didn't look away immediately. Progress of a sort. That night, Kalen woke to the sound of movement. Echo stood by his collection of salvaged items, her fingers hovering over but not touching a broken datapad. In the dim light, he could see that her skin had changed. Instead of reflecting light, it now seemed to absorb it in places, creating patterns of shadow that shifted with her breathing. "You can look at it," Kalen said softly. Echo startled, retreating quickly to the cot, but not before Kalen caught a glimpse of something near her temple. A complex scar pattern that looked artificial. Too precise to be an injury, it contained what appeared to be microscopic circuitry. The next morning, while Echo was asleep, Kalen strengthened his hideout security measures. He set up additional motion sensors and electromagnetic pulse traps at key access points. Echo wasn't just a random find. The pod's technology and her unusual physiology suggested high-level corporate or military interest. Someone would be looking for her. As if confirming his fears, his long-range scanner picked up anomalous energy readings near the debris field where he'd found Echo. Drone signatures, most likely. Search patterns. Kalen watched the scanner with growing unease. The search pattern was methodical, professional, not the haphazard sweeps of other scavengers. Whoever had lost Echo wanted her back badly. When he turned from the monitor, Echo was standing behind him, her eyes fixed on the scanner display. For the first time, her expression showed something beyond fear, recognition. She raised one trembling finger toward the screen, her crystalline skin darkening to a deep blue around her joints. "You know them," Kalen said. It wasn't a question. Echo's hand dropped to her side. She touched the scar near her temple, then looked at Kalen with such intensity that he felt as though she was trying to communicate something crucial. Kalen retrieved a portable scanner from his equipment and approached Echo slowly. "May I?" he asked, indicating her temple. "I want to see what they did to you." After a moment's hesitation, Echo tilted her head, giving him access to the scar. The scanner revealed what Kalen had suspected, an implanted bio-tracker and neural interface, military-grade, but with corporate modifications. Currently inactive, but potentially traceable. "This needs to come out," Kalen muttered, more to himself than to Echo. "Or at least be disabled." Echo made a sound then, the first Kalen had heard from her. A distorted word in an unfamiliar language, or perhaps simply pain, the universal constant. "Yes," Kalen agreed, understanding her meaning, if not her word. It will hurt, but it's necessary if we want to stay hidden. He prepared what crude medical tools he had, sterilizing them as best he could. The procedure would be dangerous. He was no surgeon, and the device was integrated with Echo's neural pathways. But leaving it wasn't an option. To his surprise, Echo sat perfectly still, accepting the inevitable pain with unexpected stoicism. As Kalen worked to disable the tracking component without removing the entire interface, she didn't cry out, though her skin flickered with pulses of deep red that he assumed indicated pain. The procedure took nearly 2 hours. Kalen managed to disable the tracking function, but couldn't safely remove the neural interface completely. During the process, he recovered fragmented data from the device. Subject 7, temporal, displacement test, asset containment failure. Echo's eyes were closed when he finished, her breathing shallow but steady. Kalen applied a regenerative patch to the site and waited. They were experimenting on you, he said quietly. Time manipulation, if I'm reading this correctly. Something went wrong. Echo's eyes opened. She touched the bandaged area, then reached for Kalen's hand. When their skin made contact, a jolt of energy passed between them. Not painful, but intense. For a fraction of a second, Kalen saw fragments of images, a sterile laboratory, masked figures, excruciating pain as energy coursed through crystal veins, the cold darkness of the stasis pod. Echo pulled her hand away, looking as startled as Kalen felt. Was that you? Kalen asked, still reeling from the brief mental contact. Echo's lips moved, forming unfamiliar shapes before producing recognizable sounds. Me, she said, the word awkward but clear. Echo. No. She touched her chest. Lyra. Lyra. Kalen repeated. That's your name? She nodded, then tensed suddenly, her attention shifting to the hideout entrance. Seconds later, Kalen's perimeter alarm gave a soft warning beep. They'd been found. Kalen moved with practiced efficiency, gathering only the essentials: weapons, portable scanner, medical supplies, emergency rations. Lyra stood shakily, still weak from the procedure, but clearly understanding the danger. We need to move, Kalen whispered, leading her to a concealed exit tunnel he'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Stay close. The tunnel emerged half a kilometer away, in a maze of abandoned mining shafts that would confuse standard tracking systems. Kalen's plan was to reach the borderlands, a region of Xylos where the magnetic ore deposits created natural interference, providing cover while they determined their next move. They had traveled less than a kilometer when Kalen's scanner detected pursuit. 3 signals, moving fast. Mercenaries, most likely equipped with advanced tracking gear that somehow compensated for the disabled implant. Run, Kalen urged, pulling Lyra along as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Her weakness slowed them, but her determination was evident in every labored step. The first energy blast struck the ground beside them, sending shards of rock spraying in all directions. Kalen pushed Lyra behind an outcropping and returned fire, his military training resurfacing in the crisis. He scored a hit on one pursuer, but the other 2 advanced with tactical precision. Stay here, he told Lyra, preparing to draw their fire. But Lyra gripped his arm, her eyes wide and determined. She stepped out from behind the cover, raising her hands toward the approaching mercenaries. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air between them seemed to ripple, as if reality itself were disturbed. The mercenaries froze in mid-step, caught in what appeared to be a localized temporal distortion. It lasted only seconds before collapsing, but it was enough to disorient them. Kalen didn't waste the opportunity, firing with precision and taking down one more attacker. Lyra collapsed afterward, her skin pale and dim. Kalen caught her, alarmed by how cold she felt. What did you just do? He asked, lifting her as they continued their escape. Time, she managed weakly. Broken time. The last mercenary recovered and resumed pursuit. Kalen, burdened with Lyra's weight, couldn't maintain their lead. He found temporary shelter in a collapsed mining structure, setting Lyra down before turning to face their hunter. The firefight was brief, but intense. Kalen took a grazing hit to his shoulder, but managed to disable the mercenary's weapon. The fight turned hand to hand, a contest Kalen might once have easily won, but years of scavenging had dulled his edge. As the mercenary gained the upper hand, a flash of crystal movement caught Kalen's eye. Lyra, barely able to stand, had placed her hand on a piece of mining equipment. Energy surged from her to the machine, reactivating it just long enough to create a distraction. Kalen seized the moment, knocking the mercenary unconscious. They couldn't stay. More would be coming. Despite his injury and Lyra's weakened state, they pushed onward toward the borderlands, each supporting the other through the harsh landscape. They reached the magnetic zone as dawn broke over Xylos, casting weak light through the toxic clouds. The natural interference would buy them time, but Kalen knew it was only temporary. They needed a more permanent solution. In the relative safety of a sheltered cavern, Kalen tended to Lyra's condition. She was improving slowly, color returning to her crystalline skin. The energy expenditure had nearly killed her, but her resilience was remarkable. "Why did you help me?" Lyra asked, her speech still halting but increasingly fluid, as if the neural interface was adapting to Kalen's language. "I couldn't leave you in that cage," Kalen said. "Simply, you should have," she replied. "Dangerous. I am dangerous. To them, maybe." Kalen finished bandaging his own wound. "What do they do to you, Lyra? What are you?" Lyra was silent for a long moment, her skin shifting through patterns of light and shadow as she organized her thoughts. "I was test subject," she finally said. "They found my people, dying world. Promised help. Leet." Her voice strengthened with anger. "Took some. Studied how we channel energy. Time manipulation," Kalen said, thinking of the fragmented data. "They were weaponizing you." Lyra nodded. "Failed weapon. Too unstable. Put in stasis. Transport to deeper facility. Accident happened." Her hand touched the healing wound at her temple. "Connection broken. Pod damaged. Then, you." The story made Kalen's blood boil. He'd seen enough corporate atrocities during the war to know this was standard procedure. Find a valuable resource, exploit it, discard what couldn't be controlled. Lyra wasn't a person to them, just an asset that had malfunctioned. "We'll find a way off this moon," Kalen promised. "Somewhere they can't find you." Lyra looked at him with her strange, beautiful eyes. "Why help? Risk your life." Kalen couldn't articulate an answer that made logical sense. Instead, he said, "Because I've spent too long running from one mistake. I won't make another by walking away." Their respite was short-lived. By midday, Kalen's scanner detected a larger group approaching, a full retrieval team with advanced equipment that could potentially overcome even the magnetic interference. "We need to move again," Kalen said, helping Lyra to her feet. "There's an old settlement at the edge of the borderlands. People who don't ask questions. They traveled through increasingly difficult terrain, unstable ground, toxic gas pockets, treacherous drops. Kalen's knowledge of Xylos kept them alive, but their pursuers continued to gain ground. By nightfall, they were cornered in an ancient ruin, possibly pre-human, with technology even the corporations hadn't fully stripped. "No more running," Kalen said grimly, checking his weapon's charge. "We make our stand here." Lyra studied the strange symbols etched into the ruin walls. "This place has power, old power." Her skin began to glow faintly, resonating with something in the structure itself. Before they could explore this connection, the retrieval team arrived. 6 heavily armed operatives and one figure in a protective suit that marked him as someone important, a scientist or executive. They surrounded the ruin, cutting off all escape routes. "Subject 7, the suited figure called out, voice amplified. "Your escape attempt is over. You've been classified as corporate property under the Frontier Resource Act. Surrender now, and your companion may be spared." Kalen took position behind a fallen column. "Don't listen to him, Lyra. Corporations don't negotiate." The suited figure approached, flanked by 2 guards. As he got closer, Kalen could see his face through the protective mask, cold, calculating, with the detached interest of someone examining a malfunctioning appliance. "My name is Dr. Meridian, head of the Kronos project," he announced. "I designed the temporal interface, currently integrated with Subject 7's neural pathways. I'm the only one who can prevent it from causing catastrophic failure as her powers become increasingly unstable." Lyra stepped forward, despite Kalen's warning gesture. "Not Subject 7, she said clearly. "Lyra. My name is Lyra." Dr. Meridian smiled thinly. "Names are for persons, not equipment. You're a failed prototype, temporally unstable, emotionally compromised, and far too dangerous to be allowed autonomy. The extraction process will begin immediately." "Extraction?" Kalen demanded. "The crystalline structure of her species allows them to channel temporal energy," Meridian explained with clinical detachment. "We've developed a process to harvest this ability, though unfortunately, the subject doesn't survive. After her escape, the project needs to be decommissioned." Kalen raised his weapon. "Her name is Lyra," he growled, "and she's not your property." Meridian sighed. "Regrettable. Eliminate the interference," he ordered his guards. What happened next unfolded in seconds that seemed stretched into minutes. The guards raised their weapons. Kalen fired first, dropping one, but exposing himself to the second. Lyra screamed, not in fear but in rage, and the air around them began to distort. The ruined structure itself seemed to respond, ancient technology humming to life as Lyra's power intersected with it. Waves of temporal energy pulsed outward, creating bubbles where time moved differently. Some guards frozen in mid-action, others experiencing accelerated time that aged their weapons to uselessness. Kalen fought through the chaos with military precision, using the temporal distortions to his advantage. He incapacitated 2 more guards while Lyra maintained the field, her body glowing with intense light. Dr. Meridian, protected by some kind of personal shield, watched with scientific fascination even as his retrieval mission collapsed around him. "Magnificent," he murmured. "The interface integration is far more complete than we anticipated. You're channeling environmental temporal energy through the ruins." Lyra advanced on him, the temporal distortions focusing between them. "Not your experiment anymore," she said, her voice resonating with power. For the first time, fear crossed Meridian's face. "You can't control this level of temporal manipulation. You'll tear apart the local space-time continuum. You'll kill us all, including yourself and your friend." Kalen dispatched the last guard and moved to Lyra's side. He could feel the power emanating from her, dangerous and growing. "Lyra," he said softly, "you don't have to kill him." "He hurt me," Lyra said, the temporal distortion intensifying around Meridian. "Caged me. Would kill me." "I know," Kalen said, "and he deserves punishment. But this isn't just about him anymore. It's about who you choose to be now that you're free." The moment hung in perfect balance. Meridian, terrified but calculating, watched for any advantage. Kalen, bleeding but steadfast, offered Lyra what no one else had, the dignity of choice. Lyra's glow pulsed once, twice, then stabilized. The temporal distortions faded, leaving only a small bubble around Meridian. "Not kill," she decided, her voice stronger than Kalen had ever heard it. "But remember." She placed her hand against Meridian's protective shield. Energy transferred between them, and the doctor screamed as knowledge flowed in reverse. For an instant, he experienced everything he had inflicted on Lyra and the others like her. When she withdrew her hand, he collapsed to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. "Go," Lyra told him. "Tell others we are not things." Kalen wasn't sure Meridian could even process the command, but he didn't wait to find out. "We need to move," he urged Lyra. "That display of power will attract attention from across silos." They left the ruins as the temporal effects dissipated completely. Meridian remained where they'd left him, staring at nothing, experiencing everything. 2 days later, they reached the hidden settlement Kalen had mentioned, a community of outcasts, deserters, and refugees who had carved out an existence in Xylos's most inhospitable region. The settlers were wary, but accepted the pair after Kalen traded valuable salvage for their entry. In a small room barely large enough for two, Lyra finally allowed herself to fully collapse. The power display had drained her completely, and recovery would take time. Kalen stayed by her side, tending to her needs, watching for signs of pursuit. None came. Whether Meridian had been too broken to send another team, or whether corporate interests had decided the risk outweighed the potential gain, they couldn't know. Days passed, then weeks. Lyra grew stronger. With each passing day, she spoke more fluently, moved more confidently. The neural interface, instead of being a tool for her captors, had become something she could control, enhancing her natural abilities rather than exploiting them. Kalen found purpose beyond mere survival for the first time since his desertion. The skills that had made him an effective soldier now protected their new community. He established security protocols, trained others in defense tactics, and organized salvage missions that kept the settlement supplied. 3 months after their escape, Kalen returned from a salvage run to find Lyra waiting on the settlement's highest point, a plateau that offered a rare, clear view of Xylos's perpetually clouded sky. At night, when the toxic atmosphere thinned slightly, one could sometimes glimpse the stars. "Beautiful," Lyra said as he joined her, her crystal skin glowing with a warm, gentle light that illuminated her face. The tears that had once tracked continuously down her cheeks were gone, replaced by a quiet strength and occasional laughter. "It is," Kalen agreed, though he was looking at her, not the sky. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. "The neural interface. I understand it better now. It connects to the temporal stream. Shows. Possibilities." "What kind of possibilities?" Kalen asked. "Ships," she said. "Coming to Xylos soon. Research. Exploration. Chance for passage off-world." Hope stirred in Kalen's chest, a sensation so unfamiliar he almost didn't recognize it. "We could leave. Go somewhere they wouldn't find you." Lyra nodded. "Many places to hide in the galaxy. Many people like us, broken but still strong." Kalen considered this. "I'm not sure broken is the right word anymore," he said. "Scarred, maybe. Changed. But not broken." Lyra's skin shimmered with what Kalen had come to recognize as her version of A. "Smile." She took his hand, and this time there was no shock of transferred memory, just the warm connection between two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of places. "Not broken," she agreed. "Just becoming." They stood together under the faint light of distant stars, their future uncertain, but their resolve unshakable. The wounds they carried, Lyra's physical scars and Kalen's buried guilt, would never completely heal. But in each other, they had found something neither expected to discover on Xylos. Not just survival, but the chance to truly live again. The crystalline tears that had first drawn Kalen to that damaged stasis pod were gone. In their place was something far more valuable, the quiet defiance of two survivors who had claimed their freedom, one painful step at a time. As night deepened over Xylos, Lyra's skin cast a gentle glow around them, a private constellation to guide them forward. Not an ending, but a beginning, hard-won peace, acceptance of their scars, and a bond forged through adversity that neither time nor space could break.